very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Today, as part of our special episode marking World EV Day, we put the spotlight on India's rapidly evolving EV ecosystem. From policy and supply chain to innovation infrastructure and the road for India to becoming a global leader in sustainable mobility, we'll be decoding all that with Randheer Singh, CEO of ForeSee Advisors, EV value chain consultant and former director at NITI Aayog. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Randheer. Pleasure to have you on our World EV Day special episode.
Thanks, Ritika. Thanks for having me here.
So to begin the interview, Mr. Randheer, India's EV sector has seen a sharp uptick in the last couple of years. Do you believe this is a pivotal moment for India's EV transition?
Yeah, absolutely. The current phase marks a critical inflection point in India's EV journey. What we call a demand pull phase, actually built on years of policy push. For example, in 24-25, we saw over 2.2 million EVs sold, which almost accounts for 7.5% of all vehicle sales, which is up from 1.7% in FY 2020. Now, this is not just a numerical, it's a structural change. Battery prices have dropped from $100 per kilowatt hour in 2010 to almost $80 to $90 per kilowatt hour in 2024, even at the system level. In fact, with the batteries like solid state and LFP advancements on the horizon, we see further drop in the prices. Taiwan cities like Delhi, Pune, Bangalore, they have actually crossed 15% EV penetration mark in two-wheeler sales, which is actually a threshold often considered the tipping point globally. And 5% in general inflection point is considered for anything to self-propel. And in states like Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, they're actually leading with dedicated EV clusters. And Telangana EV cluster at Divitapalli is attracting investments from both local and the global players. If I just put one example, globally, we have seen a similar trajectory in China. EV is now almost 38% of new vehicle sales. In fact, last couple of months, it has reached to more than 58 to 59%. And Norway over 80%. But India's uniqueness lies its bottom-up adoption through affordable two-wheelers and three-wheelers rather than just the top-down luxury EVs.
Now, India is expected to have 123 million EVs on the road by 2032. What do you see as the key factors driving this exponential growth?
I think there are several converging drivers that will propel this trajectory. First is, of course, the economic viability. Intra-city three-wheelers EVs now offer a TCO advantage. TCO is total cost of ownership advantage over 30% compared to ICE. This is compelling for fleet operators, gig workers, and MSMEs. Second is the digital aggregators. Platforms like Zip and Yulu, they are bringing institutional EV adoption mainstream by B2B aggregation. I have another startup, which is an electric bicycle manufacturing called AOK Bicycles, AOK Mobility. And in this, we have been approached by one of the biggest hotel chains. I won't name them here as of now because it's still under testing and the pilot. So they also want to, focus on carbon cutting, reducing their carbon footprint, and use the electric vehicles even for their in-house supply, which includes the pantry, which includes the utilities and all those things. So the next part which I talk about is the battery as a service. In fact, battery swapping players like Sun Mobility, Bounce, Battery Smart, they're actually lowering the upfront cost and the range anxiety in urban freight as well as the passenger use cases. Next is the OEM pipeline. Over 40 EV models across two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and the four-wheeler segments are expected by end of this year, including sub-10 lakh electric SUVs. We have already seen so many mainstream players already launching their vehicles. The next part is the policy granularity. Like cities like Delhi, Surat, in fact, are rolling out the location-specific EV cell policies. In fact, we have seen more than 24 states have already launched their EV policies. Next is the financing innovations. With NBFCs, like even the Shriram Finance has come up with launching the specific product for the renewables. Siram Green Finance. Similarly, other companies are also coming up with the specific products for the financing, and the banks creating green loan verticals. This partnership with the credit bureaus and the underwriting informal sector borrowers, we are finally solving the credit barrier.
So from a policy standpoint, how do you think India is ensuring that EV transition aligns with the country's broader goals of energy security, decarbonization and manufacturing self-reliance?
So India's EV policy architecture is actually becoming one of the most integrative globally. And I'll tell you why. First is the energy security. EVs reduce oil imports, which we already know. Almost 120 billion per year is currently what we are bearing, right? Moreover, localized charging tariffs, TOU, time of utilization base, are encouraging off-peak charging, easing grid load. Decarbonization, the push to greenify grids, 500 gigawatt non-fossil fuel target by 2030. This is the target, in fact, we have taken in the Confederation of Parties, COP26. And this ensures that EVs deliver true emission reductions. The new carbon credit trading system, which we call CCTS, will allow EVs to earn offsets. The next part is the self-reliance. And the PLI schemes, which are worth more than 18,100 crore for ACC battery and around 25,900 crore for auto and auto components PLI. They are anchoring the local capacity addition. Companies like Ola, Exide, and others, including the Reliance, they are actually planning over 100 gigawatt hour of domestic cell manufacturing in next 2 to 3 years. And the last part, which I should not leave here, is the inter-ministerial convergence. India's Gati Shakti framework is aligning EV charging infra with urban planning and actually the logistics hubs.
Mr. Randheer, could you share some of NITI Aayog's key initiatives that are driving investor interest and policy alignment across stakeholders in India's EV ecosystem?
I think I'll take a clue from my previous work at NITI. Of course, I'll no longer serve at the NITI, but during my tenure, and in fact, in its ongoing efforts, NITI actually played a catalytic role. And so to say, even the government, the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan is housed in NITI, so it becomes the catalyst in spearheading all the initiatives related to the EVs. So one is the state EV policy ranking framework. This is the first of its kind evaluation system that led to over 25 states formulating comprehensive EV policies. Second is the India has launched world's first battery swapping policy draft. This was co-created with industry to address interoperability, safety, and the business models. This actually gave birth to a formal BaaS market, now valued over 3,500 crore. The next part is innovative finance facility. Without financing, it becomes very difficult to penetrate the automobile sector. So for this particular purpose, it has been spearheaded in partnership with the World Bank to offer first loss guarantee to financiers. This has unlocked EV lending to LCVs and the e-autos. The next is EV Conclave platform. The monthly cross-ministerial workshops to align with Ministry of Housing Affairs, MNRE, Ministry of and Renewables, Ministry of Road Transport, Ministry of Heavy Industries, and others like BIS on standards, targets, and infrastructure rollouts. This particular conclave serves as the base. And the next final thing which I should point out here when we talk about the macro frameworks is the model tender framework. This includes leasing models for e-buses and aggregators. This has been adopted by the Best Mumbai and the CESL, and it is largely successful. And some of the countries in Africa and other places are also adopting these type of model tender frameworks.
Now, there's a growing global interest in India as an EV manufacturing hub. What are we doing to strengthen our EV supply chain?
Very pertinent question. In fact, when we talk about the supply chain, that is where recently we have heard so many things that it has been choked by one of our neighbors and all, that we are not getting supply of one particular component. So that is why India is actually approaching EV manufacturing with a China plus one strategy. And some of the key developments, if I should point out, is one is the cell manufacturing. So already advanced chemistry cell factories with some of the biggest players are already in pipeline. They are already being built or at the testing stage. The second part is the critical mineral strategy. India has secured almost 5 lithium and the cobalt blocks in Argentina, Australia via Kabul. We have the MOU already in place, and soon we should see these things turning on the ground itself. We also have the arrangement for the reverse investment strategies. The next part, which is very critical, is the localization of the power electronics. The companies like Sungrow, Servotech, and Exicom, they're actually localizing inverters, converters, and the chargers. In fact, recently, one of the established company has come out with the 100% localized converter. And they are right now it is getting tested, but this will actually go a long way in finally, the self-reliance for this country. The next is R&D clusters. The Center of Excellence in Pune of ARAI and IIT Madras Battery Tech Hub, they are driving IP developments in battery management system, thermal management, in fact, AI-based state of health estimation also of the batteries. The last part through which every company has to pass is the gap in the skilled labor supply. Over 200 ITIs and polytechnics now offer EV specific modules in partnership with NSDC as well as the ASDC. I think these things together are going to go a long way to strengthen our EV supply chain as well as the local manufacturing.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. Today in a special episode marking World EV Day, we turn the spotlight on India's fast-evolving EV ecosystem in a conversation with Randheer Singh, CEO ForeSee Advisors, EV Value Chain Consultant and former Director at NITI Aayog. Many startups and traditional auto players are innovating aggressively in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler EV space. Do you see India becoming a global leader in these categories?
Yes, and I think without doubt, yes, the numbers support this actually. It's not something which I am talking about. When we talk about the two and the three-wheelers, India exported over 80,000 EV two-wheelers last year to Nepal, Bangladesh, Africa, and Latin America. India now accounts for over 80% of the global electric three-wheeler market, with companies like Eiler Motors, Altigreen, and even the Piaggio India. They dominate the last-mile commercial fleets. And what makes India unique is one thing is price point innovation. It's a frugality. Two-wheelers under 1 lakh with 80 to 100 kilometer range. Second, swappable ecosystem integration. Battery leasing embedded into the vehicle pricing. And the last part is IoT and the telematics. So IoT and telematics, Indian EVs like Ather, Meta, they're deploying cloud BMS, OTA updates, and rider personalization at a fraction of global cost. So I think these are very, very specific solutions which startups are putting up. These are the innovations which startups are putting up and very specific, not only to our country, but the places wherein two-wheelers and three-wheelers adoption is actually very high.
So with India's EV charging station market growing at 25% CAGR, what major trends have you observed in this space?
Just to talk about the major trends, I think one is the low capex urban DC chargers. Players are shifting from 50 to 30 kilowatt chargers for two-wheeler, three-wheeler, cutting cost and space requirement. This is very crucial for the urban fleet models. Second, as I talked about the battery swapping corridors, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, these routes are being mapped with battery swapping stations every 30-40 kilometers, led by some of the biggest companies which have got really, really good investments. Next is charger interoperability APIs. Companies like CharZone, Static, they are building open APIs to make chargers discoverable, reservable, and the billable across apps. MHI right now is working with one of the leading PSUs to come out with an app so that all the chargers, no matter at what platform, no matter what company's chargers are there, those can be seen on a single platform through the single app. The next is The smart load management. Charging infra now integrates AI-driven dynamic load balancing, which is linked to real-time grid demand forecast. Although it has not been completed in all the places, but it's a good start. It has already been started in some of the places at the pilot. And the last part is the government-led initiatives. So we have already seen the PM E-Drive putting up almost 2,000 crores for the charging infra. And we'll be seeing most of the chargers, the fast chargers, coming up into the highways, expressways, connecting all the major metros as well as the Tier 1 cities.
Now, range anxiety and affordability continue to deter many consumers. How can industry and government work together to overcome these psychological and economic barriers?
Yeah, you are right. I think range anxiety is on everybody's mind. And if the solutions are not affordable, then definitely the demand is not going to be that high. So let me first address the affordability solutions. The first thing is we have to actually expand the FAME style demand incentives, but index them to battery chemistry or performance, not just the vehicle type. The second part, which I should talk about, the zero interest financing and leasing models. This is very, very effective. And in fact, some of the aggregators have actually given us this feedback, even for our particular models also. And when we talk about particularly for the gig workers and electric two-wheelers, zero interest financing and leasing models go a long way. The third part in affordability solution is the encouraging used EV markets. There is currently no used EV market. This needs to be, the built up from the ground zero. The bigger companies and established players has to step in for this. This can only be done through battery health certification tools, which some of the companies are developing, but we need the testing agencies like ARI, ICAT coming up with some of the tools so that the battery health certifications can be done, in a systematic manner. The next part is range anxiety mitigation. Urban local bodies, they must mandate charging infra and building bylaws, especially for apartments and the commercial complexes, established ones, current ones. I'm not talking about the new ones. Uh, because the bigger problem is in the apartments, in the condominiums, it becomes very difficult to get your own specific, the charger location. The next part is the promote range assurance models, such as real-time state of charge tracking, smart trip planning. Players like Ether are already doing this, and encourage vehicle grid integration. We call it V2X. So not only vehicle to grid, but vehicle to the home, vehicle to UPS, all those bidirectional supply, bidirectional integration. This allows charging as well as the all V2X supports. So these are the things which needs to be done to address the range anxiety as well as the affordability.
And finally, tell us, how are we ensuring that our EV policies are not just pro-consumer, but also pro-environment, especially in terms of battery recycling, life cycle emissions, and grid load management?
Sure. I think without this, our SDG goals, our commitments to the Paris Agreement and all will be futile, right? So the first part is the battery recycling. The battery waste management rules has already been mandated. They have already come out in the open, and the CPCB has mandated EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, under the VWMR 2022. The companies like Loha, Matero, Neuron, Lyco, they are recycling up to the 90 to 95% of the material recovery rates. Although currently we are doing up to the black mass, but going forward, the next step is up to the salts. And later on, what I foresee is this may go up to even the PCAM, right? The next part is the life cycle emission tracking. You rightly said that it has to be pro-environment. That is why India is piloting GHG accounting standards for EVs and linking them to CAFE norms, which has recently been come out, and also the ESG disclosures. One specific thing which we should not leave out in this discussion is the grid load management. Electric vehicle supply equipment above 20 kilowatt capacity now require grid impact assessment under DISCOM guidelines. And also the introduction of time of use tariffs by several states, which include the Maharashtra, even the Delhi. They incentivize the off-peak charging. And so if you are putting up your chargers during the time when the peak load is minimal, at that point of time, you get the lower rates. So it further increases, the TCO. And the last part is end of life battery use. The ecosystem for second life energy storage, especially for telecom towers, rural microgrids, or just to club all this, is the battery energy storage system. This is actually gaining traction. And there are many players within this ecosystem which have already started working in this. I think all of these together will go a long way in dealing with, not only ensuring that this is pro-consumer, but also pro-environment for the battery recycling, emissions, as well as the grid load management.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Randheer. This was a very insightful conversation.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.